Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. Casey Moore is a photographer I didn't really want to work with. Terrible, I know, but the truth. And then during lockdown, he and I had a conversation on Zoom when I was more open to being able to listen and to look. And I saw something extraordinary in his work. And it's something that has kept me and sustained me for the last 4 years. Because Casey captures beauty in a forensic way. And I mean that literally. He uses these really beautiful techniques to grab nature from the world around him and make us look at it. Now, some people, I think, like me at the start, dismiss this beauty and dismiss his work, but that's a mistake. Because he is offering us so much depth, and his work is singular in that way. It's unparalleled. And yes, it looks beautiful on your walls, but there's a bigger message at play. Take the time to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were. Listen to Casey describe his work, and I think you'll see exactly what I'm saying. And then take the time to look closely at his images. There's so much to them. Do you think you're a serious person?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
Huh.
Maybe too serious.
You think you're too serious?
It's not like I worry about things. Like I'm not that kind of serious, but maybe I don't. Just lighten up more often. That would be good.
I don't think you're serious. I think you take this stuff seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But this is why the question, right? Like, the work is really serious.
Right. Maybe that's where it comes from. Maybe that's why I think is actually my work isn't some kind of fun celebration of humanity or, and it's actually a really hard thing to do, right? Be funny, especially in photography.
Don't be funny in art. That should be a t-shirt. Whatever you do, don't be funny in art. Okay, but you said they're not a celebration. They absolutely are. I mean, okay, wait. Let's talk about your current focus are these blossoms. And they are kind of a celebration of nature. But how did these start?
How did they start? Good question. There is an origin kind of work in the whole series, which took place in 2018. I was driving and I saw a beautiful meadow beside the road. And I didn't have my camera at the time, but I made a note to come back and take a picture. And because it was quite close to where I was living at the time, it wasn't a problem to go back and bring my biggest camera. So I went and I got the 8x10 and set the shot up. I think I took 2 sheets of film and shot them both. And when I was looking at that meadow, that somehow the one single image of it wouldn't have done it justice. Like if I just shot the meadow as it was in a still, like square frame, it kind of didn't, the whole scene wouldn't have come to life in the way that it did when I kind of just moved the camera for the same piece of film back in and shot it again. And so you've got like more than one image layered over itself. That's how it started. And again, it wasn't until literally, I think 2 years later, certainly maybe even mid 2020, when I looked at that image again and realized there was more there than I'd looked at the first time.
But that image, which I know is very much meadowy, and they've totally transformed into this like riot of blossom and intertangled things. So it's like it has totally evolved. Do you think that this is like a passing concern? Do you see it as a series that like you're gonna have a beginning, middle, and end with? Or is this maybe like your handwriting, like the thing that you do?
Oh, I love that. Handwriting, because my handwriting is not great. So it'd be great to have some other thing that sticks with me. And yeah, for the first time, I feel like I've got a ongoing project that doesn't have an end. It's not tied to a location or a geographical kind of setting, which a lot of my work has been. And so I can keep visiting it over and over. And that joy of spring and the joy of nature kind of blossoming that occurs in different places around the world as well. And there's that crazy kind of like the trees can blossom more than once in a year. And so, yeah, I'm always looking out for that now, and I don't see an end to it. I feel like I have got something I can enjoy doing for a long time.
Do you think that there was like something in your life? I've been thinking a lot about how like the things we loved as kids are actually the things that we end up, I think, being the best at. Like if you as a teenager are obsessed with, okay, fine, ready, let's make it about me. I've always loved art. I've always wanted to look at it. I've always wanted to talk about it. For a long time, I was like, maybe that's not, like, I can't make it. So how do I figure out how to do that thing? And I think that rings true for most people. Like the thing that you were most passionate about as a kid, or the thing that you're drawn to as a kid, is actually kind of your calling if you let it be. So do you think that there was any, like, one, were you particularly outdoorsy? Were you like interested in nature as a kid? Would you stop and like smell the flowers as a child?
I was really lucky to live until the age of 13, not in a city. And so, yeah, I was outdoors a lot. I was free to kind of explore a lot. Really lucky like that. But as you were talking, a visual came to my mind because my parents took a lot of photos, carried a proper camera around when I was younger. And there is a photo of me in a meadow holding some flowers. It's just kind of like some weird, perfect, like image of a boy in a field holding flowers. And so, yeah, maybe like my mum always, my mum's an amazing artist, and amongst many other things that she produces, she presses a lot of
Mm.
flowers and plants. And so there was always kind of drying, pressed flowers and plants around when I was growing up. So I think there's an aesthetic there, but maybe there's a thread. Yeah,
Mm.
that makes sense.
That'll be the project that goes on the inside of the book.
Yeah,
When the
right.
Blossom books come out, it'll be like just Casey, it's a boy. Um, is there like, and this is maybe the last technical question I'll ask you. I don't think I've asked you a technical question yet, but is there a time of day I mean, obviously there's a time of year, it's when they're blossoming, but is there like a perfect moment to shoot these things? Or or
Now
is it,
again, like it's really freeing. I'm not tied to a particular camera, not tied to a location. I'm not tied to a time of year. Like we said, things can reblossom. And so technically it's been really such a different project for me where although I'm tied to certain parts of my kind of process with equipment, I'm not tied to any one thing. And actually all of my other work has centered on a particular format of camera. So I'll shoot this thing on this because then it will be consistent. It will have the same look.
specifically, what do you mean? What are
Um,
the other things you're shooting?
I mean, I've got some other plant series that I've shot, and they were all shot on large format, black and white.
What about the stamps?
The stamps were large format, black and white. Also a kind of origin project for me because up to that point I hadn't used large format, and also I hadn't really shot much macro. And so actually getting the postage stamp onto a sheet of 5x4 film kind of took a lot of technical research and working out where to compromise and where not to compromise on using that big format to shoot something so small. Um, yeah, so actually it's interesting because the stamps do kind of then feed into a lot of my other work. I kind of once I got those worked out, that kind of led me into other ways to shoot other things, but using the same kind of techniques.
But you didn't train as a photographer, right?
No.
Like you're completely self-taught, despite the fact that like you also make giant handprints in the darkroom. So you've learned that all kind of on the fly.
Yes, I'm trying to think where. In the dark room, I did do at school from the age of 16 to 18. Maybe even like I think we got the dark room my last year at GCSE, we got the darkroom, and I had a photography teacher that stayed with me then for 3 years, and he was obviously living his best life with this new darkroom that the school had allocated him. So he was energized, and the whole kind of photography scene at school was great. So the kind of fundamentals of processing, shooting your own film, processing it, printing it, were in place at school. But it would be another sort of 5 years, 6 years maybe, before I went back and started that thread again. And then when I did start that thread again, it was a community darkroom in South London called the Camera Club, and there were some great characters in there, some wonderful people who used it sort of professionally, and so I could always knock on their door and say, "Hey, this thing isn't working. What's going wrong?" So I got a lot of info from other printers and photographers, and yeah, otherwise reading and trial and error.
Did you do like the years and years of assisting?
No,
You
that's
did.
one bit I, for better or worse, didn't do.
Probably for better. Some of these like first assistants, right? Who they do the 24 hours. I mean, literally round the clock for years.
Yeah, I do sometimes wonder where I might be if I had done that kind of apprenticeship, if you like, in someone else, under someone else's wing. Particularly to see the whole kind of how people run it commercially. Yes, the technical stuff would be so interesting to have learned from someone else, but I kind of get that having done it myself is also great. But then the place where I have gaps is on the I suppose on the business and the commercial side and the relationship side, like not having a peer group, I guess, of other people I studied with or worked with, because I've just worked on my own and sort of studied on my own. So maybe that's a gap, maybe it's not. I'm not sure.
I'd argue the freedom in these wouldn't be there, or it might have taken me longer to get there. Was there a photograph, or do you remember looking at a photograph you'd done and being aware that one was good, and then thinking, okay, I could maybe be a photographer now?
There's 100% a one image that I don't go back to it regularly, but I remember when I saw it thinking photography is really a vital sort of human endeavor. And it's a really not a very significant photo in the sense that it's me and my sister and my parents. It was her 21st birthday. We'd gone to Prague, and I'd set up my little medium format camera on a tripod, and I had a trigger in my hand, and I had flash, and I shot us against, I think it was like a curtain in the hotel room. And whenever it was, 6 months later, and I was processing that, and I printed it out, and I looked at it, and it was, I guess it's like a documentary photography moment. And I don't really do documentary photography, but I remember thinking at that time, just like, wow, what a record, what a thing to be able to produce. Like, it's just the four of us standing against the plain background, and that really kind of triggered for me a sense of there's something here. Yeah, there are other works I guess in my kind of artistic endeavors that, yeah, the stamps were definitely another kind of moment where I felt, wow, that's really worked.
I'm so interested that it's a portrait though, because, and this is getting into the meat of you, but you kind of wear two hats, and you've done this very deliberately. There's the commercial work, and you've had, I mean, real commercial success. You've done campaigns with major brands who people know, but that's not something that you kind of put out in the world all that often, versus the work that you share more openly with us. There's no figures in it.
That's true. I've got a couple of portraits on, say, for example, on my Instagram, if that counts.
No, if I said to you, come on, let's do an exhibition together, you'd say, yeah, blossoms. Like you wouldn't say to me, absolutely, let's do a portrait show.
No, I wouldn't. But I do. I have an alter ego that is a portrait photographer. I would, I remember it was probably 15 years ago, but I remember it was like a question. Someone had fired some questions at me for something, and then one of them was, what's the sort of thing you'd want to keep doing? And at the time, I said portraits. And I feel like if there was, if I had to cut everything off and just do one thing, And regardless of success or otherwise, what's the one thing I would be happy doing forever? It would be portraits. I just love meeting people. I love traveling into other people's worlds. Of course, I don't want to give up all the other things that I do. And there's a great beauty and love that I get from disappearing into my own world and capturing things that I capture in nature. But kind of, I don't know why, I just have this like dream of being this amazing portrait photographer as well, even if I'm not.
Oh, that really surprises me. But you are. That feels like a thing you've said out loud and it'll not happen. What about you shoot your family though a bit? Yeah.
It's I shoot them a lot. Yeah. It's slowing down a little bit. It's really easy to shoot young kids. It gets harder as they get older. And it's something I'm thinking, like, it keeps ticking over me in my head now and then when I see pictures of, say, adolescents done beautifully, and I'm like, damn, I've got to like not give up on that thing that I've been doing for years with my family. And even if it's hard, and even if it doesn't, if everyone feels a bit tricky about it, I should keep trying, because there's beauty in it for sure.
It's that thing of like, what's the David Bowie quote? But like, if you push past or push into being uncomfortable, that's where all the greatness is. If you're comfortable.
Well, he was interesting too, because he said, I believe, in an interview that he'd sort of found his confidence and found his feet performing through modeling through modeling as a model. And I find that quite interesting too, like whether actually like hassling my family and children constantly to be in front of a camera will give them something in the long term, maybe.
Probably. Definitely. The friction, right, that makes it all better. What do you think's the consistent thread through the commercial work and your fine art photography? Like what's the like driving force, or the consistent thread?
I wish there was something really concrete, and I really admire so few people that I can pinpoint who do it, and I'm not very good at remembering names either. So, but I do think that marrying commercial and sort of creative and artistic work is near enough impossible. I feel like photographers, some can do it. So I don't feel like there's a sort of aesthetic thread, but my style of taking pictures when I'm looking through the lens, I think that the thread is that I'm responding almost to a vibration in what I'm seeing. It's not the composition. I don't finesse it. I'm just feeling it. I would almost never sit back and go, right, here's what I'm shooting. I should look this way a bit more, this way a bit more. It's really only in the moment that I'm doing it that I can feel what I want. And so I think that's true as well when I'm shooting, whether it's commercial or whether it's artistic work. It's the same feeling inside that's happening, even if it's not kind of a aesthetic thread.
Do you think that's like a magical thing? There's some photographers refer to it like, that they'll just be walking and see a shot, and they're, street photographers will often say that like there's a shot that presents itself and they just have to click the shutter or whatever. Do you think that's like a magical thing, or does it come from within you? Is it?
I think it comes from like a universal sort of aesthetic that we're all part of. And by that I mean, like, as I feel it when I'm doing it, it's like a faint vibration. And when things are kind of in harmony, it vibrates the right way, and when they're not, it doesn't. And that comes back to this idea that, and one of my kind of favorite, not that I'm a student of philosophy, but one of my favorite philosophers is Roger Caillois from that surrealist period in France. And he talks about a universal aesthetic. He talks about how without humanity, there remains an aesthetic. Like, even if there was no earth and there was no sort of human beings to admire something beautiful, it's still inherently beautiful. Like, and that really came across to me. And actually when I was researching and working on my meteorite series, where I'm shooting the inside of meteorites that have been sliced open, there's like unbelievable pattern inside. It struck me then that there's something beautiful inside this meteorite that is inherently beautiful. It's not beautiful just because I'm a human being and I can see it to be beautiful. It just straight up is beautiful. And so I feel like that's what, if there's a thread and if there's a common kind of aesthetic that we're all joined in with, it's that. There's an underlying natural beauty in the world that we come from and therefore admire when we see it.
Do you think that if you weren't a photographer, what would you do?
Like pick from anything?
Pick from anything.
That's a tough one. I mean, like carpentry comes to mind. To make things with wood.
I think you just like to make things beautiful. Is the answer.
Make things with wood.
That's why your frames are so good too.
Well, just admiring someone else's work there. What else would I be drawn to? Core human endeavors, right? Trying to leave something behind. Writing, acting, music. Actually, music. Yeah, that's it. You know, from a young age, just dreamt of. I mean, not that I ever played an instrument. I'm not even remotely musical, but I adore music, and I'm a real kind of collector of music. And I spend a lot of time obsessing over music, and I feel as though, yeah, in another kind of parallel universe, if I could just pick the universe I wanted to visit, be the one where I'm some kind of musical performer.
Okay, now I want to make you a photographer again. So you can go to any era, any place. You get to set up your camera. Where are you going to go to?
I mean, it's right now. That's not I got everything at my fingertips that's ever been developed for photography. I don't feel like.
Yeah, but I mean, you can take all the tech with you.
Oh, yeah.
You have all the tech. But you can go to any.
So it's an area in history, not an area in photography.
And so would you go back to a place where there are no humans and like look at the blossoms then because they'd be better?
That's tempting. That's really tempting. I've just spent some time in Rome. I think going back to like a time when aesthetic concern seemed so central to daily life. I mean, imagine building, well, any of it really, but it must have taken the entire sort of tribe at the time, all of their attention for generations to build some of that stuff. And I think that would be quite something to go and see. Kind of everyone engaged in the same beautiful.
A world where art and culture is
central,
valued, unlike today. I mean, this is my constant question, and I think kind of why I'm doing this, right, is why have we lost sight of that? People see the starving artist, the struggling artist, and that's kind of fine in our society. That's like a trope because it's like, yeah, of course you must struggle. You're an artist. And it's like, well, hang on, but the guy on the bench of the Tottenham team is paid more than most living artists ever will. So we value a bunch of guys running around in the field kicking a ball, but we don't value that. If you took all that away, the world would be awful.
It's eyeballs, isn't it? It's like who's watching someone making a work of art versus who's watching Tottenham. There's millions of people watching, and so you can monetize that. It's a bit of a cold answer, but
yeah, but why has that happened? Why did the Colosseum stay? Right, that was around then too, but this didn't. Where'd it go? And why did it go somewhere? And
but the Colosseum was also entertainment. You know?
Yeah, no, I know.
So it's its own football of the day. It stuck around.
Exactly.
But then so did the Pantheon with its like insane art inside of it.
Yeah. I just think somewhere it got lost. Art got lost.
You know, I think there's a little bit of a idealistic point of view looking back on some of this stuff. And
probably
surely there are more artists alive today than there ever have been. And there are more lives being supported through art than ever before, I'm guessing. If you don't count architectural kind of endeavor. But you can't eat art. And so you only need a couple of, you need your best artists. You don't need them all. You need everyone. Maybe we shouldn't put that in because
that's awful.
It's awful.
It's the worst. But you can't exist without it, right? Like we can't exist without art. We can't communicate with one another without art. Back to your point about beauty was here before us. We need it. It's essential. I was going to ask you, this is a total segue. I was going to ask you about like the politics in your work. Weird one. Because there isn't a politic to it, except that I think that there is. And like if you look at the stamps and you look at the meteorites and you look at these and the mountains, that there's like a oh, hold on, everyone. Can you just look a little closer? Like, can you just pay attention better? Because if you do, look what you'll see. Do you think that's a fair assessment of what you're trying to do?
I hope so. I'd love that. I myself am drawn into a sense of fascination whilst I'm making the work. And if it can communicate, ultimately that's the aim of most artists, I think, is to bring people along for the ride. And if that's what I'm doing, then great, because that is what I'm feeling while I'm making the work, is a sense of wonder and amazement at what's in front of my lens and what's out there in the world. Definitely.
2 last questions that I've asked everybody. First one is, you can buy any work of art from any time period. You could buy one of your contemporaries. You can buy a Da Vinci. What are you going to buy and why?
So it can be priceless.
Totally priceless.
It's the Pietà, Michelangelo's first work. I saw it at a time in my life when I was just starting in photography, and it's not at all why I don't feel it's significant in my work or anything like that, but I just remember looking at it and going, it's just jaw-droppingly, insanely beautiful, and it was carved out of a single piece of rock by a young person, and they just nailed it with that, and it's still here for us to kind of be moved by. I mean, owning it would be ridiculous, of course, because it should be seen by as many people as possible, but that's
an imaginary.
That piece of work is just out there for me. It's that's the one.
You should go see Claudette Johnson at Tate right now. She's one of the Turner Prize nominees, and she's done a Pietà on paper. I can't even. I keep getting flashbacks of it, and it references her. So there's text around it that says, "Every mother was called when he called for his." And it's literally this woman holding her dead son. But your brain goes back to all the Pietàs you've seen and actually what they mean. Can't talk about it. It's it's mega. It's a mega work. It's a super important work, and I hope to God it ends up in a collection. Oh God, that's really made me do a thing. Go. Yeah, thanks for that, Pietà. No, I can't remember my last question. What are the 2 questions I ask everybody? This is a kind of funny one. We'll end on this one. If there was a movie about your life, what's the opening shot?
Ski jumping. Me just fly. I want to fly through the air in this opening shot on skis. Yeah.
For the audience at home, Casey used to be a professional skier.
I didn't never earn any money. Never earn any money doing that, but yeah, it kind of it's a core memory for sure. It's just total, unabashed, fearless exploring in the mountains.
I mean, and right, to say all that, fearless, unabashed, exploring. I mean, it's a bit this.
It's coming through.
Yeah, right?
Great.
It is, for sure. Well, thank you. I'm gonna let you go. We're done.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?